This week, we continue our series on home ownership. We're helping you navigate the world of property, from building your deposit to securing finance, finding a home, and paying off that home. To help answer all these big questions, we're chatting to mortgage brokers, financial advisors, and buyers advocates. So if that's you, stick with us on this series. I'm Lachlan Nicolson, and you're listening to Mind Over Money. You're listening to Mind Over Money. Hey everyone. So last week, Archie and I walked through the steps of preparing for a home loan and getting that loan into place. It was a great in-depth discussion, and I highly recommend you check that one out. That was episode 14. This week, we are focusing on what to look for when buying a home, or what to look out for, I guess. And to help us do that, we've got Matt Tembo on the pod. G'day, Matt.
G'day, Log. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. I'm a little bit cold. We're both in jumpers, so...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a nice, cold, breezy morning. You know, Queenslanders, we are averse to anything below 15 degrees. We start freaking out.
Yes, we haven't quite shaken off winter this time, so we're nearly there. The sun's out. It's getting warmer.
That's right.
So, Matt is a buyer's advocate. He's based in Brisbane, working for Inspire Realty. One of our mates, Colin Lee, is doing some great work in that space. Matt, thanks for coming on today. Tell us a bit about what you're up to these days.
Yes, Locke. Thanks for the introduction, and it's quite an honor to be on the podcast. So thanks for inviting me. I work for Inspire Realty. We are a property advisory and a buyer's agency based in Brisbane. Prior to that, I used to work in development. So I used to work in property development, so for a property developer. So it was a pretty cool journey that I did for 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was an accountant. So I'm all about the numbers. Now, so these days, really just trying to engage families and navigate the property market, as crazy as it is.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Accountant to property developer to property advisor. And now buyer's advocate. I love
That's
it.
That's right. It's a whirlwind.
Well, yeah, you've picked up a mountain of experience over the years. It's exciting to see you become a buyer's advocate now, because I can really see how all that experience has come together, and your passion and love and enthusiasm for property is really at the centerpiece now of this change in your career. And people need help buying a property. There's a lot to navigate in property in general, and now in this market where things are a bit upside down sometimes, or it can feel that way.
Absolutely, Locke. It's. I think the last 2 years have just shown that, with property, it is not as simple as we used to think it was. I think particularly when it comes to the fundamentals, how to get a property, right? I think back in the day, I was listening to you and Archie last week, and you were chatting about going into a branch with your suit on, and there you go, boom, you've got a home loan. But
what is that? A branch?
A branch. That's right. But it's not the case nowadays. It is a very technical process where you have to make sure your finances are in order. And now purchasing a property itself, it's not as simple. You could just, buy a property next to your parents, whatever it is, everyone lived in the same suburb, and it was just, as simple as that. But now our cities are getting bigger. There are way more types of properties. You could just, most people used to live in an established kind of property, but now you've got duplexes, dual occupancies, you've got apartments, you've got all sorts of arrangements. I think for a layman, for a normal, simple person, the process is almost, an education in itself. So for us, the goal is to really walk through our clients step by step, and to also, I suppose, examine where they're at in terms of, hey, what do you see yourself in terms of where you'd like to live? Like, what's the vision? Most people don't really have that resolved, we find.
Yeah, we'll get into that vision in a second, but you're right. It is so much more complex now. We have different types of dwellings. We have, even in Brisbane, or the way cities are made up these days, you've got suburbs, pockets of suburbs, suburbs within suburbs.
Yes.
And to wrap your head around the complexity of that and to remove the emotion, I can really see why now more than ever, people need a buyer's advocate to take them through a process to help them make these decisions around buying a property, because they're big decisions. So as we look at this process, what are some of the things we need to look out for that you would be coaching people through as they're buying a property?
So when it comes to property purchase, most people overlook the fact that anything connected with property is going to be a massive cost. So for instance, the wear and tear of your kitchen, the wear and tear of your roof, these are costs that are going to be, quite substantial. So it's very important as we're purchasing property for us to have that future mindedness, if that's a term, in considering what we're trying to purchase. Otherwise, we're going to just blow out our budgets.
Yeah, it can be easy to sink a lot of money into a home after purchase. And I guess if you're an investor, you'd want to be more mindful of those costs, right? Because that's going to affect your investment return.
Absolutely.
And then so a buyer's advocate, that's one of the things that a buyer's advocate looks at is the ongoing running costs of that dwelling.
That's correct. So I think as a buyer's agent, our main role is really to, I suppose, kind of go into the future for you, right? So we try and give you a clearer understanding as to the consequences of purchasing the property, and to try and, I suppose, incorporate some of the things that a normal person wouldn't really factor in. Okay, so for instance, when we're purchasing a property, most people would look at the aesthetics. Oh my goodness, it's in a fantastic street. I love the fact that it's close to a cafe. It's just those things. Oh, my kid is going to walk to school. This is awesome, right? And they get very excited. Whereas for us, yes, we tick those boxes as well, but we also think, hey, is there any constraints attached to the property? Okay, for example, are there any easements at the back of the property? Because, well, guess what? If something happens and the council needs to access the property, well, they've got legal right to. So are we making that consideration when we're purchasing a property? Most people aren't. They are looking at I suppose, the emotive aspects of the property. Also, we think in terms of things like future developments. Is the property in a space or in a location where there may be potential redevelopment? Because if there is, that may change the value of the home. Because imagine if your property were to be right next to a massive apartment block, and that could block your view. So things of that nature, we try and look at all the scenarios before the client has purchased the property.
As buyers, we go into it on our own. We are looking at what we can see and what we can touch and feel at the inspection. I guess a buyer's advocate's really looking about what's not seen, all the hidden things.
That's right.
In the suburb planning, the home planning. There could be things attached to that home, like an easement. There could be restrictions on how that home can be developed in the future. So there's some of the things that it sounds like a buyer's advocate is out looking for you to make sure that property is going to be a good investment or a good home for you to live in. What else in this process, working with a client, what are some of the things that you're talking to them about and that you're helping them make a great decision on a home?
Absolutely. Another aspect that we discuss is when we're making a decision with a client is that we are very much so data driven. So we delve into the numbers in terms of what makes a good investment and what makes an average investment. And that's really determined by things like suburb statistics. Okay, so an easy one that gets thrown around a lot is vacancy rates. So if it's an investor, for example, for them, they're thinking, hey, how quickly is my unit or my house going to be rented out? So for them, we'll look at the statistics. For example, a particular suburb may have a vacancy rate of 0.05%, which is a fantastic number. So which essentially means that, if a suburb were to hypothetically have 1,000 homes available, only 5 are going to be available at a time to rent out, which is a really good, I suppose, as an indicator as to the demand of that suburb. It means most people want to live in that area. Okay, so we break down those numbers. Another statistic that we can dive into is renters versus owner occupiers. And this ratio just shows you that, hey, this suburb has a lot of owner occupiers, which generally, just as a general rule, just means that owner occupiers are likely going to take care of their properties a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit more tightly held. And most people who purchase properties in those areas are going to be more emotionally influenced because, well, it's very nice. It's close to schools, cafes. It's close to shopping centers. It's just it's more aesthetically pleasing. It's got all the attributes that make family living well. Okay, so which means that, hey, there is a lot of potential for future growth in this particular area because, well, the people that are going to be purchasing a property are likely going to fight for that property. So there is a cross section between property purchase and demographics. We kind of go into detail as to, hey, the kind of person that is going to purchase the property in this suburb is likely going to be this oriented, which means that, hey, we are positioning ourselves in a particular market, in a market that is, I suppose, really competitive.
I love that. You're bringing in both financial and non-financial data sets to create a really good outcome.
That's right.
I can imagine how a property that's mixed in with owner-occupiers in a balanced renting market might have a greater lifestyle effect, which would then drive up the demand for people living in that area.
Absolutely.
Which all leads to a better investment return, but also leads to a future sale on that property having stronger growth in that property.
That's right.
So you're helping people go through a process to find the suitable investment property for their strategy. What happens then? Like, do you go out and actually look for the home? Do you do the inspections? I imagine people who engage a buyer's advocate might be a bit time poor or they don't have the capacity to go out and do all this research themselves. What happens next in the process?
That's right, yeah. Once we're engaged and we go through the discovery, get an idea as to what the goals and ambitions are of the client, and we have a good solid brief as to what kind of property, what's our budget, then we really try and make sure that time is on our side. So we try and give them at least a 6 to 8 week period where we are just basically collecting data and trying to, I suppose, make comparative analysis with what we assess is essentially a good deal. Okay, and where we have consensus with the client, we then make an offer or we make a bid. I suppose as a buyer's agent, we're really trying to drive it. And our relationship with the client is I suppose, more consultative because we're just catching up with them just to see if they are happy with the way we're going. And so once we find a really good property, we do go for an inspection. We do ask all the necessary questions. We, I suppose, do a condition report to make sure that everything is all, ticked and flicked. And once we've got the thumbs up, then we go back to the client, discuss all the concerns, all the constraints, every single thing that we've already discussed, and if they give us the green light, then we can put in an offer.
Yeah, and as a buyer's advocate, you would have a good relationship with local agents, right? And perhaps even access to properties that we can't find a normal person on realestate.com. I'd imagine there'd be a lot of off-market opportunities that a buyer's advocate can get a handle on. Yeah,
that's right. That is one of the benefits, the prime benefits of using a buyer's agent is in our line of work, because of the relationships that we build. I would say most, and this is maybe jarring to hear for people, is that most of the properties are not on realestate.com.au because what happens, I'll give you an example. We have situations where a potential seller is a couple. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they're going through a life change, and they've just decided that they need to sell as quickly as possible. Or it may be an elderly couple that do not have the resources to go into a marketing campaign, the billboards and the videos and the photography. So they just need to dispose of this property as quickly as possible. So they obviously sign an agency agreement, real estate agent, and the real estate agent has networks. So they just send us an email, hey, we've got such and such property. They need to sell. This is the buyer's range. This is the price range. What are your thoughts?
And I imagine that you as a trained negotiator would be able to go in and actually assess the fair value of that property.
Yes.
And then negotiate a good price. This is huge because when it goes to market, you've got all the emotions of the buyers rocking up at the inspection, at the auction, and that is what drives the price up above the listing price. As we've seen at some recent auctions, especially down in the southern cities of Sydney and Melbourne, where you've got homes going hundreds of thousands above the initial price just because of the demand on the day. So to be able to get access to a home before it hits the market, that's worth a weight in gold and definitely worth the fee of even engaging a buyer's advocate.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have access to those properties. And I'd imagine it'd be a bit of like an iceberg. Is what you see on realestate.com is just a little tip at the top showing on the top of the water. And
that's right.
All these other proproperties available underwater.
I'll tell you what, Lachlan, I've had situations where I thought I should have bought this property because, I once engaged, a seller. And sure enough, they were going through, unfortunately, a divorce. And so they said, hey, this has to sell because we have to settle. And we're looking to get this done as quickly as possible. And once I did my comparable market analysis, did the numbers, we were shocked because it was well over, I would say, circa 75K lower than what it ought to be. So when I presented to the client was happy. And it was almost a mind-blowing exercise because it was instant equity because the market value of the property. So once they did the valuation of the property, the valuation was $75,000 over and above what they had purchased it off. So then that instant equity can potentially be utilized, towards their next purchase if that's their goal.
That's very helpful, especially in a market now where rates are starting to go back up. And there's a higher chance that property values might be going down even between the time when you go to actually purchase and settle on a home. So to be able to get something that's under the price, it just means you have access to that equity straight away. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So even with the interest rates going up, the market is definitely softening. So it is, I suppose, the tide is turning in a sense. So it's becoming more of a buyer's market now. So
in some markets, I'd imagine a lot of markets are still much going up. Yeah.
Yeah. In some markets, it's becoming more, it's leaning towards the buyers because there's more room for negotiation because it's not as emotional as it was 1.5 to 2 years ago, where it's just, you would have 40, 50 people jousting for a property.
So the first part of the process of engaging a buyer's advocate would be the discovery, so doing the research, and then you guys create that plan, and then you go out and actually find the property, negotiate.
Yep.
What happens from there? You would then help that go through, working with the client's mortgage broker, I'd imagine, and help that whole process go smoothly.
Yes, with the purchasing process, we do work very closely with the mortgage broker and the solicitor as well. We may also include a property manager in the conversation. That way we can get a determination as to, hey, how much can we get this onto the market? What's the rental appraisal? And what are the costs associated with marketing this to potential renters? So we really do, it becomes almost a team effort at contract stage because we always have to be in constant contact to make sure that nothing is missed.
All right, so as a first home buyer, let's just switch gears here a bit. What are some of the tips that you would suggest a first home buyer looks out for in looking and finding their first home? Things that you as a buyer's advocate would be looking out for if someone was engaging your services?
I would advise first-time buyers to first and foremost get your finances in order. It is so key to make sure that as you are, getting on into this journey, that you've got a pre-approval, you've spoken to your broker, you know the extent to which your finances are going to be committed now and in the future. Like if you have to pay for your council, landlord insurance, or your own house insurance, whatever it is, make sure that you've got a really good handle on your numbers. Okay, so that is number one.
That's a good tip. Yeah, okay. I love
that. Number two, think about selling your home before you buy it.
Okay. What does that entail?
I know this may be counterintuitive, but think of your home as an investment. Now, so ABS tells us a very interesting statistic. It says most Australians are going to be in their homes for an average of 11.3 years, right? So think of yourself as being an investor. Put your investment hat on, okay? If you were to move or if you were to purchase a property, what would make it a good investment, right? So is it in a good catchment of a school? Is it really close to all the amenities? Is there access to transport? Are there any particular constraints that you need to minimize? So what's a constraint? Okay. Is it in a very noisy road? Okay. Because that's going to be a constraint, when it comes to selling the home, right? Is it going to have an easement at the back of the house or on the side of the home? Is it going to be, is it an awkward shaped property that cannot be subdivided, or what people like to call a battle axe, right? So it's making all these considerations before you purchase a home, because yes, I think there are those emotions and they come flooding in and they're very strong. Just kind of set them aside and think like an investor. Do as much research as you can, and if need be, include professional counsel in your research, right? Engage a mortgage broker, engage a financial planner, an accountant, if you can afford to, engage a buyer's agent, and try and really understand why you're making that decision, right? So that you can come to a more scientific approach. So yes, I think it's fine having those good feelings, but try and balance them with a bit of professional, I suppose, advice on your way.
Yeah, I love that. It's good to have a gut feeling about a place, but it always pays to check the numbers.
Absolutely.
What about when you come to actually purchase and you're a bit nervous and the real estate agent's picked up, that you're keen on the place and they start to push the price up? Is there any tips around just negotiating or really just keeping a cool head when you rock up at an inspection and maybe you see a bunch of other people there as well? Like how do you walk through that without overcommitting to something?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I think there's a principle when it comes to negotiation, which is whoever is invested the most will lose. So this is just something that we experience as buyer's agent often. So we go in with a very stoic, mentality where, we are completely trying to remove the emotion from the process. Whereas if you are an owner or occupier, you're already envisioning your kid going down, down to school down the road. You can look, you're checking out the cafe. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to park my car here. So.
And the real estate agent's looking at that going, just rubbing their hands together.
I mean, that's the language they use, isn't it? So, yeah. I mean, I am a real estate agent technically. So, I mean, when, the first thing you do when you go to an inspection or a walk-in is like, oh my goodness, look at this big walk-in robe. Isn't it amazing? And then you're like, oh my God, yes, I'll put my clothes there. And so ideally, so for us from a negotiation point of view, you really have to, I suppose, approach it with as little emotion as possible. Now, that is very difficult, but this is where I counsel people in general to usually, go in packs, right? Or communicate through someone else. That way you're not having to, I suppose, leave buying clothes with the real estate agent, because, you got a big grin on your face and you're super excited. As buyers agents, because we are essentially professional buyers, we're going in there without any emotion and I suppose really thinking about the numbers. So I always like to counsel my clients when if or friends, whatever, like if you are going to be purchasing a property, ask more questions as opposed to making statements, right? So it's like, oh no, we've got our pre-approval. It's like, that's a buying sign.
I love the kitchen. I love this.
I love the kitchen. Oh, the backyard is massive. It's right.
Perfect. Yeah,
exactly. Don't make a statement or something that would I suppose alert the agent that you're interested. But try and ask open-ended questions. Do you have any offers? How much do they spend on the renovation?
To get a fair assessment of the property.
Yeah. How old is the property? When was it built? Who built it?
True.
Have they done any subdivisions has this block been subdivided before?
We found out when we moved into our townhouse that the developer went broke right at the end of completing the project.
Wow.
And so there was just mad rush to finish the whole complex. Now the complex turned out well. It is still a good quality build. But details that we didn't even know until we moved in.
Wow. Yeah. And you know what? Even because if you do not ask, they won't tell you. But there may be certain information about the property that the real estate agent needs to disclose, but you need to ask them. So it's like, is there any material problems with the property that I need to be aware of? Because there are cases where people have purchased property and where something there's asbestos. So most people, they just love the facade, but it's like, no, you need pause. Ask the agent if there's anything that will materially impact the property in the future or any information, right? Because in some cases, there may be an issue with the soil, okay? Or you may be in a bushfire zone, or you may be in Queensland. It's like the whole state is in a flood zone. But asking, the flood zone. Yeah. So for us as buyers, those are the things that we look at. We go into research and have an idea as to we've done our research, but are we overlooking anything from an environmental point of view as well? Flood zone, bushfires, and types of soil. Because if your home is built on clay, guess what's going to happen? After 40 years, there's going to be a big crack in your kitchen. And that's because your house is going to be moving, right? So all that due diligence, that's what we do. But if you're going to be going into it yourself, try and ask as many questions as possible. It's never a bad idea to ask. There's no dumb question.
Yeah, I love that. So go in, just be ready to let go of the home. I love the home, but I'm ready just to let it go until the last minute when it does go through.
Yes.
And then, so just keep a very loose hands, loose gloves. Hold everything very loosely, knowing that this can go and that's okay. We'll be okay. We'll keep looking.
That's right. Yeah. So because the initial those initial feelings, they're not helpful. So I think as we're getting into purchasing our first property, I think this is where you need family or friends as a soundboard, right? Because you need to also understand what your emotions are saying to you. Because the thing is that we don't understand because it's our first time, right? So
or professionals, because I found that sometimes family can just affirm your emotions.
That's great. That's really good.
There is a little asterisk against family and friends if they can help you figure out the right questions.
I'll caveat that. Yes.
If they're just saying yes, you might need to get a third party that's a bit more logical.
That is very correct. Yes, because you don't. I do find that when we do our discovery sessions, clients also find it very difficult to articulate what their goals and dreams are. It's very difficult. It's like, okay, cool. If you did not have any more money or any need for money in your life, what would you do with your life? They're like, whoa, that is too much. So But I ask those questions that way we can understand what your actual goals are, because your goals are driven by your aspirations or your dreams, right? So, yeah, why do you want to have capital gains? It's a very, I suppose, kind of sexy, kind of cool term, capital gains. But we try and dig deep. Why capital gains? Why not a rental return? Why not that? And so, by understanding that, okay, it's like, oh, okay, it's because you want to leave a legacy for your children. Okay, you want to be able to have more income to be more generous. All right, okay, that makes more sense. Then when we go into our strategy session, we're continually bringing up those goals, because that's really is what's going to drive the decision.
So we digressed a little bit. That's really important for first home buyers, because what you're saying there is there's an underlying value behind the goal that's a little bit deeper than I want to buy a property that's going to go up in value. The deeper level is, I have a value for a certain type of life, a life maybe with my kids walking at the park or being close to work or something like that. And uncovering what those values are is really going to help us determine what's a suitable property to buy. The same way as an investor, you're looking for, either am I looking for a good rental return, or am I looking for long-term capital growth, or both? And that comes from obviously a goal from behind that of I want to leave this for my kids, or I want to have income now that's growing. So that's cool.
Yeah. I concur. I just want to actually just affirm that point, because I think when we are purchasing property, we can do it. I suppose we can be very surface in our, I suppose, understanding, because we're thinking, I just want to have a beautiful property for the sake of having a beautiful property. But with property, it can open up other beautiful things in your life, or it can actually hold you back.
I love
right?
that.
Because
So
it can
good.
create financial security.
Or stress.
Yeah, or financial stress. So if you were to have purchased, let's say, a more modest home, and try and pay it off as quickly as possible, and then shortly after that, then you purchase an investment property that creates cash flow in your life. So you've sorted out the issue of having accommodation because you own your own property. Now you've sorted out the cash flow issue because you now have a property that's essentially passive income. So in doing so, you've opened up so much in terms of what you can do with your life. And that's the freedom that most people don't have. But if we're going to be purchasing a property because it's, very beautiful and, we love it, but, we spend all this money, then it's going to be 30, 40 years of us just, I suppose, always on the edge, which creates anxiety, and it doesn't really benefit us in the long term, even though it looks good now.
So emotions are not an investment strategy. I think
That's right.
this conversation that we're having today is super helpful for myself. I think for listeners as well. These are the kind of conversations that people would have with a buyer's advocate, right?
Yeah.
When uncovering what is that balance between the financial results and also the happiness, the return on the freedom and the generosity and the joy that I can have from making right decisions around property. I think that's right there in itself is worthy to talk to a buyer's advocate and to have that conversation, even if it is just that initial discovery session, to see if this is something that's good for your situation.
Yeah.
I love it. This has been a really great conversation, Matt. Hey, any final tips before we head off?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I think last final tips. I'd just say, I really, just encourage everyone. I know that we are in a bit of a kind of a crazy time in property, but it's to not be wary or despondent, and just keep chugging along, keep doing the fundamentals, which is, live below your means, and keep the basics right, and you be in a good position. And I suppose, to be future focused, not, getting embroiled by, I suppose, the headlines, but have a plan in place. And once you are in a good position, take advantage. Also, another, I suppose, comment is Australia is a very large country. So I think most people generally make the error of trying to invest or trying to buy property where they know, right? So this is where it's important to bring in a professional mortgage broker, financial planner, or buyer's agent, because if being an owner occupier is not in your plans and you just want to invest and live wherever you like, then there is potential of investing whatever you can afford. But this is where I suppose introducing a professional mind can make things a bit better for you.
Yeah, and I imagine there's so many opportunities just beyond where we know and where we're comfortable with. And so getting help to invest beyond our own understanding and to get the best return, because there could be a great property in another city or somewhere else in the country. You're right, this is a big country with lots of properties, different types of properties and markets. And so we really want to be sticking to what's good for the investment strategy, the investment plan. And that plan can sometimes stretch beyond what we know and what we're comfortable with. And so I can really see why getting professional help with that is going to be super valuable.
That's right.
Well, this has been fun. We'll get you on again to give us more property tips. Hey, where can people find you if they want to engage your services? Where can they find you online?
I am on the socials, so you can catch me on Instagram. I am Matthew Tembo _ buyer's agent. So Tembo is spelled Tembo. Matthew Tembo on LinkedIn, and our website is inspirerealty.com.
Awesome. Go check it out. Matt Tembo, inspirerealty.com. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having this chat, and we'll look forward to getting you back on soon.
No worries. Thank you, Lachlan. Appreciate it, and all the best, mate. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Hey, before we go, everything we've discussed today, just to note, is for educational purposes only and does not consider your personal financial goals or situation. So this is not financial advice. And if you'd like to speak to someone about your financial situation, you should head over to waymakerpodcast.com.au and we can connect you with a qualified financial advisor. Thanks as always for listening to Mind Over Money. We hope you have a great week.